Agent Morris with the NSA.
There is something real here.
Do you believe that our government is in possession of UAPs?
Absolutely, based on interviewing over 40 witnesses over 4 years.
And where?
I know the exact locations, and those locations were provided to the Inspector General and some of which to the intelligence committees. I actually had the people with the first-hand knowledge provide a protected disclosure to the Inspector General. Biologics came to some of these recoveries. Yeah.
Those could represent exquisite new adversary technology.
Non-human, and that was the assessment of people with direct knowledge on the program I talked to that are currently still in the program.
The government is covering up some level of its knowledge and understanding about what some of those things are.
The Soul Foundation, which just announced a new initiative for UFO research and policy.
It's nuts, man. I mean, we're just small-town buds who saw a UFO in the woods. I mean, now we're hanging out with the government.
Wow. What floor were you guys on?
Hello. Welcome to another edition of Anomaly-NOW, straight out of Austin, Texas. I'm your host, Smiles Lewis, and this is the weekly news and media roundup for the 501c3 nonprofit Scientific Anomaly Institute, aka the Anomaly Archives, based here in Austin, Texas. Thank you for joining us. We're going to dive right in. I've got a great bunch of news, including some cryptozoology headlines, as well as some parapsychology-related news, and, of course, some UFO UAP news. So, of course, you can, as always, watch us go through these news links at our Flipboard, flipboard.com/@anomalyarchives. Click through to the Anomaly Archives Flipboard magazine, and you'll see a ton of news articles, many of which we are not going to get to because there's just too much all the time, but there's a wealth of information there that you undoubtedly will be able to find something that interests you. So thank you for joining us, and please explore our Flipboard links and, more importantly, our anomalyarchives.org website, as well as our patreon.com/anomalyarchives webpage, where you can join for free, or you can help us have monthly income to get us back into a physical location. We take donations at levels of $1 a month, $2 a month, $5 a month, $10 a month, and upwards. And there's great new stuff being posted there. We're going to be uploading a bunch of interesting, rare stuff for the rest of the month, and have some more live online presentations in the coming months with news on that to follow. Okay, so diving right in, our good friend Ken Gerhard is a amazing cryptozoologist, and he's recently, I think, relocated outside of Texas, but don't hold that against him. He is the guest on a show from the the Ropin Network. That is a cryptozoology-oriented giant bird, Thunderbird kind of oriented network, cryptozoology network, and they have a YouTube channel, and he is their guest on the Giant Bird Attacked My 10-Year-Old Son video, Thunderbirds and Aerial Phenomena, and you can get a sample of that.
Next, Thunderbirds, not just avians but reptiles too. A conversation with famous cryptozoologist Ken Gerhard.
All right, well, moving right along the same avenue as Thunderbirds, we have over at thunderbirdphoto.com new thunder crow sightings around the Hoh rainforest in Washington. This is June 8th over at thunderbirdphoto.com. Reports of thunderbirds resembling giant crows or ravens have a long history in North America, most recently on the Olympic Peninsula. I love this illustration and artistic representation of the giant ravens witnessed in and around the Hoh, H-O-H, rainforest of Washington state. I hope I'm pronouncing that correctly. I've written previously about thunder crows, the name I've given to giant mystery birds that resemble crows or ravens. These are a subset of the avian cryptids known as thunderbirds, a variety of gigantic, unidentified birds collectively named after the elemental beings of Native American tradition. Frank Graves, quote-unquote, the cryptid hunter, told Mysteries of Canada writer Hammerson Peters that he reviewed the infamous Thunderbird photo that cryptozoology forefather Ivan T. Sanderson once had in his files and described the dead bird pictured hanging on the side of a barn as a big black bird like a raven, with a wingspan between 20 and 30 feet. Quote, I think thunderbirds are ravens. They're just giant ravens, Graves says. The cryptid hunter might have been onto something. In May of 2025, I was contacted by a new thunder crow witness revealing a compelling recent history of these birds sighted in and around the HOH rainforest on the Olympic Peninsula in western Washington state. Quote-unquote, Marshall, whose identity I have validated but wishes to use a pseudonym, is a lifelong resident of Washington. He works for a large manufacturer and is a part-time mining prospector. In 2016, Marshall was looking to purchase a retirement property that offered solitude amongst the beauty of nature. Skipping ahead, let's see. At about 1 p.m., Marshall walked around a blind corner on the trail and stopped in his tracks when he saw something shocking and inexplicable. Perched atop a large 10-foot-tall cedar stump that stood along the trail, an aged remnant of the forest's periodic harvesting with 2 springboard notches cut into its trunk and a blue huckleberry bush growing at the base, was the largest bird he had ever seen. Quote, its back was to me, and this thing was big, said Marshall. An average country boy who knows his animals and is familiar with all the large birds seen in Washington, Marshall knew this wasn't a bald eagle, the California brown pelican, or the turkey vultures that arrive in the summertime. I can tell you one thing. It was not any of those birds, he said. It looked just like a giant raven. I was 15 feet away from this bird. It turned its head, and I saw a red slash under its eye. There were tufts of feathers behind its beak, just like a raven would normally have, and the blackest eyes I've ever looked into. Editor's note, the feathers on the beak were likely rictal bristles, which are morphologically similar to mammalian whiskers. The enormous bird stood more than 4 feet tall, with folded wings that stuck up above its body, giving it a hunched appearance. The bird stared at Marshall for a breathless moment, then turned its head and spread out its wings, revealing a stunning 12-foot spread that rivaled the greatest recorded wingspan among Andean condors, the largest birds of prey in the world, which also stand around 4 feet tall. The bird ascended from the stump, quote, and every time those wings flapped, they compressed the air with a deep whoosh, said Marshall. About 10 flaps, and it coasted over the treetops and out of sight. You can read the rest of that over at thunderbirdphoto.com, and I love that artwork for that. Over at phys.org, let's see. Some interesting primate news. 5-year study suggests chimpanzees strike stones against trees as form of communication. Yeah, and there's video linked here. A recent study by behavioral biologists from Wageningen University and Research and the German Primate Research Center has uncovered a remarkable phenomenon among wild chimpanzees in West Africa: the use of stones to produce sound, presumably as a form of communication. Over the course of a 5-year field study, the research team collected video footage at 5 distinct locations within the nature reserve in Guinea-Bissau. This was made possible through the use of camera traps and with essential support from local field guides. In specific areas, a striking behavioral pattern was observed. Adult male chimpanzees repeatedly struck stones against tree trunks, resulting in characteristic piles of stones at the base of these trees. The study is published in the journal Biology Letters, and there's more there, including linked video and the suggestion that, of course, that this is transmitted learned behavior. The observations point to cultural transmission. Young chimpanzees adopt the behavior from older group members, indicating that it is learned socially rather than genetically inherited. Very interesting. I bring it up in the context of cryptozoology because, of course, tree knocks are one of the more common, believed to be ways of Bigfoot, Sasquatch, what have you, this type of cryptid communicating with each other and possibly communicating to us. In a similar vein, over at thedebrief.org, SETI researchers report potential discovery of communication, quote unquote, by non-human intelligence in Earth's oceans. This is by Micah Hanks from June 9th. For the first time, scientists have documented a unique behavior in the animal kingdom that provides new insights into non-human intelligence and potential clues in the search of intelligent life from other worlds. The intriguing discovery made by scientists with the SETI Institute in collaboration with scientists at the University of California at Davis involves large bubble rings produced by humpback whales. These bubble rings are not unlike the smoke rings produced by tobacco enthusiasts, which the cetaceans make while interacting with humans. Although known from past observations, the researchers say this behavior, which had never been significantly studied until now, could represent a unique form of interspecies communication. Bubbling bursts of communication? In the past, humpback whales have been observed using bursts of bubbles under a range of different circumstances, including corralling prey and during mating, when males produce trails of bubbles while escorting females. In the recently documented behavior, researchers with the whale SETI team say humpback whales also generate these bubble rings while interacting with humans during friendly encounters. And there's some great photographs here. This article, of course, goes on. It expresses the importance potentially for this sort of research and why it might be relevant to the study of SETI, the search for extraterrestrial intelligence. You can find that over at thedebrief.org. All right, moving right along to parapsychology is this recent video from Jeffrey Mishlov's New Thinking Aloud, titled Parapsychology Update with Callum Cooper. That's Callum Cooper. Callum Cooper is a senior lecturer in psychology at the University of Northampton in the United Kingdom. He is author of Telephone Calls from the Dead. He is co-editor with Stephen Parsons of Paracoustics, Sound and the Paranormal. And he is co-author with Alex Tannis of Conversations with Ghosts. He is co-director with Jeffrey Mishlove of Parapsychology Education at the California Institute for Human Science. His website is callumcooper.com. Simple enough. Anyway, this is about an hour and 40-minute discussion between Callum, Jeffrey Mishlove, and Amy Vadnais. And I'm making my way through it, but I love to hear updates on the study of parapsychology. I think it is one of the most important fringe frontier sciences that is largely underrated and yet has perhaps the most wealth of data of all the anomalistic fields of study. So I want to go check that out at the Jeffrey Mishlove YouTube channel. And this one is from the English version of El País, Flashes of Lucidity Before Death, the debate shaking up neuroscience. Near-death experiences and terminal lucidity raise questions about what we know about consciousness. Very interesting. Haven't had the chance to digest this very much, but the second paragraph begins, in his book, Threshold, Bathiani recounts his research on this little-studied phenomenon, relating cases of family members and healthcare professionals who witness what appears to be a temporary return of lucidity in someone that they thought was lost. According to his estimates, up to 6% of people who appear to have lost consciousness forever experience it. In an interview with El País, the psychologist defends the importance of studying these cases to understand their significance. For him, they challenge the current notion that mind is only an emergent property of the brain, and that when the brain is damaged, consciousness disappears forever. For Bathiani, terminal lucidity challenges the, quote, naive materialism that links capacities such as memory or vision to specific areas of the brain. He believes this idea needs to open up to the possibility that there is a consciousness independent of the brain. Quote, under normal conditions, perhaps the best model is the materialist one, but as we approach the end, materialism no longer applies, he argues. And again, you can read this over at elpais.com, and this is a Spanish language publication, and this is in their neuroscience section, but is available in English. So meanwhile, I'm very excited to learn about this upcoming event in December at Esalen. That's the Esalen Institute, the infamous, the famous, the fantastic Esalen Institute there on the California coast. The title of this upcoming course that's going to happen in December 5th, 6th, and 7th of this year, The Soul is a UFO, Understanding and Embracing Transcendence. This is going to be presented by Jeffrey Kripal, no stranger to Esalen, and Kevin Can. That's Kevin, last name Can, Cann. who is somebody I've only recently become aware of and who has some very interesting thoughts that dovetail somewhat with mine and others that I know on what he calls Platonic surrealism. The webpage over at esalen.org for this course that you can get scheduled for says, what happens when we refuse to dismiss mystical, metaphysical, and anomalous experiences as mere fantasy, pathology, or accident? What if these moments, often brushed aside by mainstream discourse, actually reveal deeper structures of consciousness and reality? The Soul is a UFO offers an imaginative, grounded space to explore such questions, designed for those who seek to make meaning of their own mystical or paranormal experiences. Those who wish to invite such experiences safely by using coherent metaphysical frameworks, and those simply curious about the possibilities that lie beyond the surface of conventional reality. Drawing on Platonic surrealism, a framework developed by Kevin Can, we will engage in structured dialogues and experiential exercises to explore how the metaphysical can be encountered without losing contact with embodied life. The method serves as a stabilizing interface between metaphysical vision and everyday cognition, which is especially valuable for neurodivergent thinkers, seekers disillusioned with reductionistic models of the self, and anyone questioning culturally prescribed limits on identity and perception. Now, I think also, Joshua Cutchin is also going to be involved in this somehow. I'm not seeing reference to that in the listings here, but, recommended reading. He may be participating. Maybe this is just through the recommended reading. How to Think Impossibly by Jeffrey Kripal, Josh's latest book, Fourth Wall Phantoms, and Why Materialism is Baloney by Bernardo Castro. Yes, you can find out more about that. And if you want to schedule a workshop, you can go to esalen.org and register now. Oh, yes. So, one of my favorite new publications is Mind Field Bulletin, which you can find at mindfieldbulletin.org. And it is a publication of the Parapsychology Association, which you can find out more about at their website, parapsych.org. That's PARAPSYCH.org. And the Mind Field Bulletin is released its 17th issue with the title and topic of UAP and Edges of Experience. I believe this was posted just a few days ago on the 14th. And there are a ton of great articles. This introduction states, in this issue of Mindfield, the contributors center their analysis on UAP from a variety of perspectives with supplemental essays on history, healing, and intuition. Mike Safone argues that UAP require an expanded epistemology grounded in radical empiricism and non-dual metaphysics. Anyway, it gives a breakdown of the different articles, and I am going to just briefly show you some of the other articles that you might want to check out that are featured here. However, I'm bringing this all up in the context of our parapsychology section because there is a great relevance, a great wealth of articles in this issue that are connecting, as I like to see done, parapsychology and ufology. One of those is this article, which dovetails with something I've brought up in recent episodes, EHEs, Exceptional Human Experiences. David Mitchell has an essay in this issue titled Exceptional Human Experiences in Ufology and Parapsychology, Connections, Culture, and Cosmosis. It ends with a mention of the wonderful new series that I've mentioned before, Cosmosis, but I really just, again, want to urge people to look into the subject of EHEs and as a way of looking at anomalous experiences, APEs, as sometimes I used to call them or hear them called, APEs, anomalous personal experiences, as a variant on EHE, exceptional human experience. This article by David Mitchell starts by saying both the unidentified anomalous phenomena, UAP experiencer, and the parapsychological phenomena experiencer invite the experiencer to move beyond consensus reality into a deeper understanding of reality. As scholars such as astrophysicist and ufologist J. Allen Hynek, 1972, or parapsychologist Etzel Cardania, 2015, have noted, extreme ridicule and repression have been aimed at these subjects of study for decades within the United States. As such, these events and their psychological effects, broadly conceived of as exceptional human experiences, or EHEs, White, 1994, tend to threaten contact with the liminal, the trickster, and the ontologically shocking. Now here, and then he also references, herein I focus on accounts from the 3-part docuseries Cosmosis, co-hosted by Kelly Chase and J. Christopher King, which recounts the EHEs of various people and their theoretical and conceptual associations. I also draw from the West African Akan principle of Sankofa as one framework to understand how to approach EHEs and their profound impact. Now, again, I'm bringing this up mainly because I want to focus on what I've mentioned before, which is Ray White, R-H-E-A, Ray White's early 1990s promotion of the acronym EHEs as a alternative to the more scientific approach to parapsychology in terms of experimentation, lab type experiments, quote unquote hard science as it relates to the weird consciousness aspects of anomalous cognition, parapsychology, ESP, psi, that sort of thing. By focusing on the narratives and the transformational nature of these kinds of exceptional experiences. And sure enough, at the bottom of this interesting essay is the list of references, which includes Ray White's 1994 paper, Exceptional Human Experiences and the More We Are, and which actually you can see over at ehe.org, which I've directed you to before in our previous talk of Ray White's relevance to all of this. And this is the essay there over at ehe.org with its abstract and the whole article. All right, moving quickly right along before we take a brief break is this other article with a very similar title from coincider.com. There we go. Coincider.com, article by Bernard Bateman, MD, from June 3rd. Feeling the Unseen, the Science of Exceptional Experiences, Authentic Communication Beyond Words with Dr. Christine Simmons Moore. And yeah, this looks interesting. Haven't had the chance to listen to this yet, but again, just the reference to and use of the phrase exceptional experiences caught my attention, and this links to looks like a podcast episode, either video or audio only. Not really sure. All right, we're going to take a quick break and we'll be right back. All right, folks, welcome back. So we're going to move into the UFO portion of tonight's show. Thank you for staying with us, and thank you for liking, subscribing, hit that notification bell, all that good stuff. We have noticed an increase in our YouTube channel subscribers. We greatly appreciate that. And of course, you can go to our website, anomalyarchives.org. You can subscribe to the website and get notifications of updates about there. Or you can also, we'd prefer, go to our patreon.com/anomalyarchives page, where you can sign up for free and get the same kind of updates, as well as peeks at into the material that we're offering to our paid patron subscriber members. All right. So we left off here with more Mindfield Bulletin essays. This one from one of the editors, I believe he's part of the team, Jack Hunter, one of the editors, I think, of Mindfield Bulletin from the Parapsychology Association. Numinous Geometries, Reflections on UFOs and Apparitions from Cymru, C-Y-M-R-U. I don't know how to pronounce that. This essay starts with this paragraph. This short article presents a selection of unusual UFO and apparition accounts from Cymru, Wales, which seem to resonate with each other in terms of their major phenomenological characteristics, while also being more complex than many quote-unquote standard observations of anomalous lights. I have discussed elsewhere some of the difficulties that emerge when attempts are made to establish neat taxonomies of paranormal phenomena and experiences. And he cites his own work from 2021 through 2023. Such experiences often seem to resist easy categorization, The accounts presented here are no different. They straddle the lines between what are typically classed as UFO experiences, ghostly apparitions, and religious phenomena in both their presentation, i.e., how they are experienced at the time of the event, and their subsequent interpretation, i.e., how the experience is made sense of afterwards by the experiencer. The discussion presented here will begin with some late 20th century UFO sightings from Wales before moving on to consider earlier accounts. It will conclude with a summary of some emerging patterns in these experiences and a run-through of several different possible explanations for them. Now, Jack Hunter is a really interesting, ecologically oriented UFO and paranormal researcher. I find his approach very interesting, again, because of his ecological orientation. And he's just done so much in that realm that he's really carved out an amazing niche for his own brand of discourse, and I highly recommend it. Well, earlier when we were talking about this issue number 17 of Mind Field Bulletin, we mentioned Mike Siffone's excessive remainder article, Scientific Possibility, Epistemic Limits, and the UFO Experience. I'm not sure, but I suspect this has a lot to do with part of his discussion at this year's Rice University AOTI Archives of the Impossible conference, which you can find the video for online if they've made it public yet. But as I've said, you can go to our webpage for the AOTI 2025 conference on the anomalyarchives.org website and find the links to all of those wonderful presentations, including Mike Siffone's. And he, of course, is the main founder behind SUAPS, the Society for UAP Studies, SUAPS.org. I forget if that's the right address. But anyway, this is another essay that is featured in the Mind Field Bulletin that focuses on UFOs. Moving right along is this excellent article, Incredible Testimonies. In the 1980s, thousands of Americans began to suspect they may have been abducted by aliens. What happened? Now, I really want to do a deep dive on this. I'm not going to attempt that tonight, but this is a great historical overview by a good friend and fantastic UFO historian, Greg Agigian, who is a professor of history and bioethics at Pennsylvania State University. His most recent book is After the Flying Saucers Came, A Global History of the UFO Phenomenon, which I've reviewed on this podcast. And this essay, which is lengthy, but in just the right length. And while some folks might find this a little dry as far as it's not speculating, well, it does get into the professional academic arena's perceptions of UFO contact, alien abduction narratives, and UFO sightings, but it does so, as he is so good at doing, as a neutral historian should. Again, I recommend his book, After the Flying Saucers Came, A Global History of the UFO Phenomenon, and I believe this essay is an indication of his upcoming next book, which I think is going to focus on contact and alien abduction narratives in the UFO phenomenon's history. And anyway, we'll probably do a deep dive on this. Plus, I'm hoping to finally do an interview with Greg Agigian soon, and of course, you'll be made aware of that. So you can find out more about this over at aeon.co. That's aeon.co. Title Incredible Testimonies about Alien Abduction Phenomena. Another really interesting article that I have not had the chance to read yet. So how do I know it's interesting? Well, it's because it's from this blog that I really like called The Observer. There it is with its telltale owl on a limb with a silhouette of a moon behind it. This is over at theobservermagazine.substack.com. And this is a two-part article called Heaven's Gate, Pawns of the Superspectrum? Were Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles controlled by ultra-terrestrial forces beyond their control? And this came out on my birthday, June 12th. Have not, like I said, had the chance to read it yet, but I really am looking forward to it. Of course, the two, aka Bo and Peep, Doe and Dee, Marshall Applewhite and Bonnie Nettles, co-founders of the infamous Heaven's Gate cult, were first really documented and written about and researched by Jacques Vallée in his 1979 book, Messengers of Deception. And, oh, well, let's see. It says Hughes and Steiger documented their early discussions with the two in a book with a mouthful of a title, UFO Missionaries Extraordinary. I'm not sure what year that came out. I am not as familiar with that. But anyway, this looks to be like a interesting read. The reference to the superspectrum is, of course, to John Keel's hypothesis or idea that he expressed in regards to this idea that UFOs and the beings associated with them were somehow traversing the electromagnetic spectrum that he referred to as the superspectrum, and especially, of course, since we only perceive this thin sliver of that spectrum, the larger part is the superspectrum. Maybe there's a better example of this here in this part one. What if the two, Bo and Beep, Bo and Do and D, Toe and T, what if the two were victims of the superspectrum? The superspectrum is a conceptual model that accounts for every flavor of supernatural phenomena. Popularized by Fortean author and researcher John Keel, the theory suggests that UFOs, ghosts, and other paranormal displays share the same source. They're manifestations of energy controlled by mysterious bands of cosmic radiation. By harnessing various wavelengths from across the electromagnetic spectrum, this quote-unquote superspectrum can bring forth physical apparitions like glowing cryptids, ghostly phantoms, and nuts and bolts flying saucers. So again, this is just part one. Some nice illustrations, and looks to be just the kind of thing I want to read. I can't wait to get around to this. And part two has also been released at the same webpage, subtitled Unpacking Similarities Between Heaven's Gators and quote-unquote victims of the superspectrum. Stick with us, people. There's still a part three coming. Woohoo! Okay, can't wait. Again, another cute illustration here of a kind of Victorian black and white suited gentleman sitting next to his Victrola, but with a color alien head pasted on his body, and coming out of the Victrola's horn is a colorful rainbow of pastel colors coming out of the clouds where he is sitting with his Victrola down onto a cityscape. Okay, that was just for our audio listeners. Meanwhile, over at thewowsignal.news is The Wow Signal, a new PR site for anybody interested in UFOs, the paranormal, spirituality, the whole gamut of anomalous topics and subject areas, and that is partnered in collaboration with the MUFON, Mutual UFO Network, and the Hollywood Disclosure Alliance. It's basically a PR firm news site for pumping out press releases on these subjects and helping people in this scene gain a wider audience through the traditional networks of press releases. And I only just became aware of them. Not sure how good they're going to be for this kind of material, other than hopefully getting the word out about things that might interest you, me, our audience, anomalists everywhere. That's thewowsignal.news. And also there's a new book being published by Routledge. That's ROUTLEDGE, Taylor and Francis Group, called A Phenomenology of the Alien, Encounters with the Weird and Inscrutable Other, edited by Aaron B. Daniels. This is available over at, like I say, Routledge.com, ROUTLEDGE.com. Don't know that much about it. The description states that the book considers both literal and figurative experiences of the alien from a psychological, psychoanalytic, and philosophical perspective. Throughout the book, the authors wrestle with the unexplained, ineffable, unspeakable, sublime, uncanny, abject, and Melville's abcanny. Not familiar with that. This collection provides phenomenologies of encounters with the inscrutably alien, from lights in the sky, dark corners of weird fictional landscapes, architecture, technology, or the clinical symptom. The chapters examine fictional and non-fictional encounters with what exceeds the capacity to quote-unquote make sense, taking a new approach to the topic of alterity and inviting the reader to examine how these encounters reflect our contemporary condition culturally, individually, clinically, theologically, and philosophically. Bridging cultural, psychoanalytic, literary, clinical, media, and religious studies, the novel approaches in this volume will be of interest to students and scholars alike. And it gives the table of contents where I guess we can see some of the authors' names, most of which I am not familiar with, but this type of anthology really intrigues me and I think could be worth definitely adding to the Anomaly archives. Ooh, but look at that price. $38 for a paperback, $190 for a hardback. What is this, thick enough to stun an ox? Is it that big? No, it's because it's an academic text, I'm sure. Meanwhile, over at mysanantonio.com is this article that apparently our friend Christopher Jordan helped the journalist write with background research, titled "The 5 Most Famous UFO Sightings in Texas's History, from the Lubbock Lights to the Stephenville Sighting." This is written by Natalie Grigson for My Essay. That's mysanantonio.com. And you can also listen to it. And so the types of the 5 sightings that are mentioned range from the Shoal Creek sighting and crash in Aurora. So the Shoal Creek sighting is an alleged airship sighting here in Texas, here in Austin rather, above Shoal Creek in north central Austin, and its possible connection to the alleged crash of an airship or UFO in Aurora in 1897. This, of course, is all about the airship wave of the 1890s that went across the United States western part, but there also was a British version. There's also information on the Lubbock Lights in 1951, the Edinburgh crash in 1966. This is one that's been the basis for the very popular ongoing series of conferences down along the border put on by Noe Torres and the city of Edinburgh. And of course, the fantastic, very influential to my childhood mind, the Cash Landrum incident of 1980 that happened outside of Houston, Texas. First heard about that on the TV show That's Incredible. And I believe it ends with the Stephenville sightings of 2008. So you can go to mysanantonio.com and find out more about that interesting article over there. Let's see, we're closing in. Oh, well, we actually have much more. But so this past Friday, I think it was Friday the 13th, or was it Saturday, June 14th, was Whitley Strieber's 80th birthday. And he put out a video titled "Whitley Bares His Soul and Reveals Some Secrets on His 80th Birthday" at his Whitley Strieber YouTube channel. Ah, yes, June 13th, 1985. On his 40th birthday, June 13th, 1985, Whitley Strieber was 6 months away from an event that would change his life and ultimately also change the world. A little over a year after his December 26, 1985 close encounter and abduction, he published Communion. Now it's June 13th, 2025, 40 years later, and he has given his life to this effort. Here he looks back on the occasion of his 80th birthday to the high points of his long life in close encounter and forward into the future of the human interaction with our visitors. He also tells some truly hilarious stories from his childhood and some profound ones, and reveals for the first time some of the truly explosive things he has come to know. You can watch that over at his Whitley Strieber YouTube channel. It's about an hour and 20 minutes. And we used that as the occasion for posting to our Patreon for all members, even the free ones. So if you want to see what I'm about to mention, you should go over to patreon.com/anomalyarchives and become at least a free member. But yes, we posted rare video of Whitley Strieber from the Texas Book Festival in November of 2000. I was honored to be present in this Texas Capitol Senate room where author Whitley Strieber and his co-author of War Day, James Kunetka, were there, and Whitley was speaking about his then new book, the coming global superstorm that he co-wrote with Art Bell. Interestingly enough, at the same time as this was going on, November 2000, you might remember that there was, as has been much the last few years, a contentious political environment around the presidential election. And in fact, we could hear, occasionally interrupting Strieber's talk, the chants from the protesters across the street at the governor's mansion, which, of course, this was the famous Gore-Bush election, and the contentious hanging chads and the Brooks Brothers riots and all the other craziness that went on. But yeah, very interesting lecture. It's about 20 minutes long. And actually, this is not the entire lecture. This is the only portion I've ever been able to get. It aired. The video was recorded by a local abductee here in Austin, who was also an Austin Community Television, ACTV, ACAC, Austin Community Access Cable TV producer, who recorded it and edited it down and put it online, but I only got like about 20 minutes of it. But yeah, at the very end of the video, I see the back of my head as I'm approaching Mr. Strieber. But very interesting. This is also when I first ever heard him or anybody suggest the idea of using fMRI brain scanning technology as a potential lie detector, especially, as he's suggesting, to try to prove that abductees believe in the reality of what they've experienced. Anyway, you can watch that by becoming a free member of our Patreon. All right, quickly moving on to the end, we have some other miscellaneous news headlines that include thedebrief.org yet again. Antarctica scientists, quote, don't actually have an explanation, unquote, for strange radio pulses coming from below the ice. These guys were looking for neutrinos and started discovering strange radio signals coming from below the ice. Intriguing. Still don't know what's causing it. I'm sure your minds go to all kinds of speculative hypotheses like mine too, but you can find out more about this over at thedebrief.org. And there's this headline, trigger warning, sad animal deaths are never fun to report on, but cattle mutilations continue to be something that attracts folks like ourselves who are looking into strange, mysterious phenomena. This one is titled over at cbsnews.com, Mysterious Deaths of 15 Cattle Frustrate Colorado Rancher. Authorities, quote, they started flopping over and dying. So these poor cattle ranchers literally witnessed their cattle dying before their eyes, several of them. And this was the last one to die was witnessed by a veterinarian. A local veterinarian arrived in time to watch the last animal pass. That was the one on which an on-site necropsy was performed. So, of course, they're trying to figure out, was there some kind of mass poisoning that happened? Who knows? There's not really any indication yet. Last week, personnel from Colorado Energy and Carbon Management came out to the Exo Cattle Company's property. They flew drones that measured the air for excess carbon emissions or materials from oil and gas production. They also took soil samples. So far, nothing. Yeah, very distressing. I feel so sorry for the cattle and for the ranchers. But what this immediately reminded me of, but is not mentioned in this article, is this article from over a decade ago, 2012, June 25th, 2012. This was from cbsnews.com as well. Grass linked to Texas cattle deaths. This happened in Elgin, Texas, or Elgin, as some people say. A mysterious mass death of a herd of cattle has prompted a federal investigation in central Texas. Preliminary test results are blaming the deaths on the grass the cows were eating when they got sick. The cows dropped dead several weeks ago on an 80-acre ranch just east of Austin. The grass is a hybrid form of Bermuda known as Tifton 85, which has been growing there for 15 years. And so apparently this kind of grass can give off cyanide gas or produce cyanide. Let's see, where is it? Yes. Preliminary tests revealed the Tifton 85 graft, which has been there for years, had suddenly started producing cyanide gas, poisoning the cattle. Quote, coming off the drought that we had the last 2 years, we're concerned it was a combination of events that led us to this. Dr. Gary Warner, an Elgin veterinarian and cattle specialist who conducted the 15 necropsies, told Kelly. What is more worrisome, other farmers have tested their Tifton 85 grass, and several in Bastrop County have found their fields are also toxic with cyanide. However, no other cattle had died at the time of this article. Now, there's nothing mentioned in the more recent CBS News. Now, maybe they've done a follow-up article. I haven't yet seen that, but there is this brief clip I did want to play from their local news.
A ranch owner in Fremont County baffled as now 16 of her cows mysteriously died from sulfate poisoning. Carrie Higgs tells us half of her herd died in early May in Coal Creek, which is west of Pueblo. 15 cows died in one day. 2 cows died while pregnant, leaving 13 orphaned. Higgs and her family are pouring money into testing to try and find the source of all of this. Well, now the state agriculture and health department also stepping in to investigate.
So, possible sulfate poisoning. Yeah. Well, on that grim ending, well, actually, two more things to try to lift us back out of that. So remember the massive structures underneath the pyramids? Well, there's, I think, a fairly new video that's been posted by Project Unity YouTube channel, breaking full technical presentation on the Giza Plateau massive underground structures. This is about an hour and a half long, and you can go to Project Unity's site. Of course, we're going to post all the links to tonight's news articles in the show notes for this episode of Anomaly Now over at our anomalyarchives.org website, as we always do. And so whether you're listening to this or watching, you can go to the Anomaly Archives website and find the episode page for tonight's episode and find the links to this, and including these videos. Meanwhile, the last thing I want to do, one more article. Popular Science, popsci.com. Researchers create most human-like robot skin yet. Ugh. A hydrogel-based hand was poked, prodded, burned, and slashed to help robots, quote-unquote, feel. It's just getting creepier and creepier by the day. Now, finally, again, to uplift stuff out of this, there is a YouTube channel that I think you'll enjoy called Crop Circles from the Air. Come on, crop circles, yay! They make you feel good, right? Both viewing them, whether you're remotely or while you're up in the air. So we're going to go out with this just a little bit of this video that is how I found the channel. So check it out. Hope you enjoy. Thank you for watching. Good night, good day. Take care. Be safe.